Every mile drives the economy, from the drivers who fill the shelves to the professionals, investments, and innovations that support it. Behind it all are decisions made every day, under pressure and at scale. Hosted by leaders from across the industry, this is Cents Per Mile, insights that drive better decisions. A CD Life production.
Welcome to the all-new Cents Per Mile. I'm a host, Kevin Hall. Thrilled to bring you a new season of Cents Per Mile, a reimagined season of Cents Per Mile. New format, new content, and a new panel of experts. Shout out to Charles, Paul, and Josh for an amazing first 5 seasons of Cents Per Mile. They're off doing their own thing, and glad to see that go on. But when we looked at what we wanted Cents Per Mile to be, we didn't want it to be another influencer podcast that's out there. We wanted it to be real decisions, real insights from industry experts who've been in the seat that you're in right now to make critical decisions. Some of those decisions may have been wildly successful. Some of those decisions, quite frankly, may have failed. But at the end of the day, they were in the seat, making the decisions, driving companies forward, and ultimately led to success. So when we went out and looked for these experts, we searched high and low. But at the end of the day, I am thrilled to introduce my new colleagues as co-hosts for this season of Cents Per Mile. First, we have Karen Smearcheck. Karen is the president and owner of Veriha Trucking, and she's also a history maker. She was the first woman elected as chairman of the Truckload Carriers Association. Karen, great to have you on Cents Per Mile this season, and tell the audience a little bit about your background.
Awesome. Well, I am thrilled to be here as well, Kevin, and to have Tom alongside us as well is really exciting. My background is that I was born and raised in the trucking industry. It's in my blood, and we hear a lot about that because there's a lot of family businesses in trucking. So just as a whole, I'm the youngest of 4 children. My father founded the company, and when we were young kids, it was, hey, do you want to be part of a family business? And when you're 13 years old, do you really know what you want to be when you grow up? Absolutely not. But I said, yes, let's give it a shot. And here I am now 21 years later, full-time in the industry. But as a whole, Veriha Trucking is running 200 trucks. We're based in Wisconsin in a small town 50 miles north of Green Bay on the Michigan border. And we have a fleet that's running in the Midwest. And I have just a lot of passion for the industry. So I'm excited about this upcoming season.
That's great. That's great. And it's great to have perspective of a while it's not your name on, but it is your name on the trucks, right? Like it's your family, it's your legacy. And it's fantastic to see that perspective because that is trucking, right? That's the majority of trucking that's out there. So great to have you this season. Super thankful that you're taking time out of your busy schedule of running a company to join us this season. Next, we have Tom Albrecht. You've probably seen him out there on some conferences doing presentations. He's out on the road quite a bit. Tom has started in trucking in 19-something. I won't go to how long ago that was, Tom, but from Wall Street to running a carriers, strategy, to now the chief revenue officer at Reliance Partners. Tom, I know you're busy everywhere, but super happy that you brought your vast experience and insights into Cents Per Mile this season.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here. And I've been around this crazy industry since 1988. Similar to Karen, I'll give you just a little bit of background. I grew up near St. Louis on the Illinois side, so about 25 miles from Busch Stadium, where my beloved Cardinals play. And you're right. Initially, my exposure to this industry was through Wall Street. I never did work in New York, but I worked at different regional boutique investment banks and research firms that kept me. It was kind of a mix of St. Louis, Chicago, and Richmond, Virginia. Ultimately spent 12 years at BB&T Capital Markets. We ended up having the biggest transportation conference on Wall Street every February down in Florida. So that was a real hardship for people to get down to Florida in mid-February. And then that career ended about 10 years ago in July. Did some consulting for the next year, including some of the largest motor carriers in the country, public and private, and then became the CFO at a large Midwestern-based truckload carrier. And then as of 6 years ago, this past April, came down to Chattanooga, where initially I was both the CFO and Chief Revenue Officer. We went through a little bit of a recapitalization of the company when we brought in private equity, and then handed off the reins to my CFO successor in May or June of 2024. So full-time Chief Revenue Officer, and it's been a delight. For the audience's sake, Reliance is an insurance, but we don't do life, home, or auto, or any other lines of property and casualty. All we do is trucking and logistics. We have over 10,000 customers, work with about 700 freight brokers, and the remainder are motor carriers.
That's awesome. Yeah. Again, that's the exact type of experience that we wanted to bring, insights that drive decisions in this crazy, crazy trucking space. My goodness, it's wild. I got to be honest, I don't have a trucking background. My background is in marketing and technology. I definitely have lots of family members who've been lifelong truckers. So it's amazing space to be in. I love that blue collar. I love that sort of heart of America concept within trucking. And then you bring this technology marketing element into it. I've been fortunate to be the CEO of CDL Life and Cub Ventures for the past 3 years. And I got to tell you, like, past 3 years, imagine me coming into trucking 3 years ago, Tom and Karen. Wow, what a time to enter, right? I was we had a first company in the .com bubble bust. If you all were involved in that, that was an interesting process. But this, I got to say, is one of the probably most interesting spots that I've been in for sure. And so, as you look at everybody that tells me that when I came into this, that trucking has cycles, and it's pretty consistent. There's cycles up and cycles down, and you can see the graphs historically. It'd be interesting to see from you all in these making positions. How does this cycle relate to prior cycles? Tom, you're more from of course you lived, I'm sure, prior cycles as either from a Wall Street perspective or running a carrier. Now you're sort of a vendor to trucking insurance space. How does this cycle impacted your organization? What are some of the differences that you see from prior cycles?
Well, so this has been the most extreme cycle, but really the world began to change probably a little bit in the late 90s, but it wasn't really visible till about 2003. And what do I mean by that? Deregulation of this industry occurred in 1980. And for about 20 years, it was kind of a go-go growth. Companies were growing as fast as some of the more famous technology companies in America. Fleets that would start with 5 or 10 trucks might have 500 to 1,000 just years later. And in the late 90s, it started to show some strains that it was more, at least modestly cyclical. The go-go growth days were ending. And then really since about mid-2003, it's been more of a deep cyclical. And what I mean by that is when the cycle turns for motor carriers, it's like the best of times. Pricing goes up almost like it has its own PE ratio. And then when downtimes hit, it's been much more volatile on the downside. And what we've ended up with is this cycle that we've just come out of a few months ago. The downside of it, we're already off to the races faster than any cycle I can ever recall, after having seen the deepest, ugliest downturn that anyone's ever seen, at least since 1980's deregulation event.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm fortunate to have some amazing people on our board of directors who've been through, lots of cycles in trucking. And I can remember them saying, don't worry, Kevin, it's trucking, right? Yeah, it's extended, but it's trucking. It's going to come back around. So Karen, I'm sure you've seen it through the eyes of a leader running your company. You've probably seen your dad run through different cycles and managing through, making key decisions. But what's your sort of experience in other cycles and how this one relates to some of the priors that you've seen?
Kevin, I really appreciate your comment saying you've been in this industry for 3 years. And that's one of the things that I truly have to reflect on with team members of saying, what's their tenure at Viria or in this industry, to say, they don't know any different, right? So if you joined in 2022 or later, all you know is, oh, this industry is going to turn in 6 months. This industry is going to turn. Like, be ready, it's coming. And
Um,
now I'm the liar because it hasn't turned. And so today my team's hearing from me, hey, this thing I've been talking about coming back for the last 3 years, it's here. It's like
yeah.
we need to run now. So definitely appreciate those comments, but really
Uh-huh.
just there's ups and downs and it's cyclical. I think at Viria, we used to say it was almost like a 7 year cycle that we expect one poor year every 7 years. And you
Mm,
got to plan for that, right? So
yeah.
I have a numbers background, worked in public accounting, and it's just kind of saying cash is king is what
Mhm.
the hat you always have to be wearing of just saying don't have yourself so far so spread so thin that you can endure through a bad cycle. And I think
Yeah.
that was the hardest part of this is to endure through the cycle that we just went through with resilience and grit is every single person on the other side, whether you're a vendor partner or in the trucking seat, we've all been impacted by this. But really going off of some of Tom's comments too, and you know we get in this upcycle, oh, go buy trucks, do this, and it's almost like the OEMs are stopping trucking carriers from making poor decisions and pushing too much capacity out there saying we know how much you need. And so it's like you hear the comments today, order boards are filling up, right? So depending on which OEM you're purchasing from. So
Right.
but just living through the cycles, with my dad founding the company and being a startup, like he definitely understood stress and people
Mhm.
who get loans on your homes to make payroll and things like that. So he would joke around and say, Karen, you don't know what stress is. I had to live through the stress of understanding what it was like to know if our family was going to have food on the table.
Wow.
Right. And so he's like, until you don't know where your food is coming from, you don't know what stress is, to which I
Uh,
respectfully disagreed. I said, I'm very confident that I know what stress is. And so
that's got to
it
be
might be
some
a
great.
different stress, but it's definitely stress. So,
Yeah.
and just the other comment on the cycles, it's pretty unique when you talk to different carriers on how they endured through the different cycles. Because I was talking to a carrier yesterday that they thought the 2008 through 2012 was worse for them than this current cycle. And I was
Mm.
like, wow. And I think what kind of clicked with me was it all depends on your specific situation. And so for Viria, we had some acquisitions happening in 07, 08, and that made that cycle not suck or suck less for us.
Mhm.
And so it really depends on where some of those pieces are in your individual freight mix, things like that, and just really making sure that your company is set up for success. So and whether that be on a diverse commodity mix, a diverse customer mix, all of that.
Mhm.
And that's kind of how we've endured through the cycles that we have.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned people who don't have the experience in it. That's one of the things we've been working on just from a culture perspective, right? During a downturn market, how do you keep people engaged? How do you continue to build that culture when they don't really understand the implications, from the various stages that's impacting and the potential of the upswing, right? It's that hope. And then you have all these prognosticators out there that are saying it's turned. Used to go quarter by quarter, and it was turned, then it hasn't, then it turned, then it hasn't, right? It's just every so many minutes somebody comes up with something different. So we just hang in there and hope for the best is all that I know we can do at this point.
Well, I think there's two words that I'll introduce for our audience, and Karen's probably heard me use them at different conferences. Trucking is about chaos. Chaos has become normal for this industry, and you better get used to whipsaw. There's the
Mhm.
big whipsawing effect in this industry, almost like a teeter totter. And, I think the thing that's maybe still confusing for a few folks right now is demand has not improved a whole lot. Obviously depends upon what sector you're talking about, whereas the supply contraction has been so significant, and it's just allowed this thing to take off like a rocket ship over the last, I mean, the vital signs were improving in the fourth quarter, but we'll just say year to date to
Right.
be a little bit more accurate, because people weren't sure if the fourth quarter was a little bit of weather and the normal holidays. But, we've got clear evidence now that we are in a new cycle that's on the upswing.
Yeah, we're not actually involved in the loads and all of that, but what we're involved in is the truck driver recruiting side of things, right? How many jobs are being placed, how many are open. We
Yep.
actually started seeing about October-ish, obviously with the non-domicile English-speaking exodus that happened in that. That impacts, and we are seeing dramatic differences today in cost per lead, cost per hires are going up. Even things like driver response. Drivers are pickier. I think it's a driver market now. They're getting into a part of making decisions, having lots more options in that, not responding to phone calls of recruiters. And so that's a change that we've just seen. I've just had conversations in the past 2 weeks with every client that I talked to indicated that their response rate has dropped dramatically. So a lot of different changes in that. It's interesting part when down cycles happen, the ones that typically fare better in the upcycle are those that find a way to rebuild or re-innovate during a down cycle, have that opportunity. Not everybody has that luxury to do that, right? They kind of survive, and then they're there because they survive. They have an opportunity to take advantage of the upcycles. But a lot of things have changed. Like if you go back to the last upcycle swing, there were always differences between prior upcycles. The patterns are all the same. It's still issues that you have to manage through, right? Decisions that you have to make. But I mean, if you look at some of the ones now, like again, I mentioned the non-domicile English speaking, the Supreme Court on broker liability, Yellow is not there, along with many, 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 many other companies that are no longer existent. We have tariffs. We have probably more activity around nuclear verdicts. There's this thing, it's called AI, we didn't have before, right? So Karen, you're making decisions day in, day out. Like what about this market, this time in the history, do you see as that keep you up at night, that worry you, but also those things that give you like hope that there's growth opportunities for your organization?
Kevin, I have so much more hope today than I have in my 21 years. And I think if I had to summarize, what am I taking with me from these last 4 years of pure torture of running a trucking company, is that you need to move when the data tells you to move, and you have to be courageous with your decisions and just do what the data is showing you to do, right? We're always going to put humans first, but truly that you have so much at your fingertips, get it into a usable format and make courageous decisions. So, you kind of packed a lot in that question of saying like, well, what keeps you up at night? And it's really the things to me is I have this passion for technology. I have this passion for safety. And I have a passion for learning. So everything that you just packed into that question are things that have the passion. And if my team can't see the passion, if my customers can't see the passion, or the people I interact with, then I should hang it up and stop doing it. Right. And so it's like, I invest in safety because I want every driver to come home to their families every night. I want the motoring public around them to be safe. And that's the thing that helps me sleep at night versus keeps me up at night.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So it's like, I packed a lot back at you and how I responded to that, but it's just the thing is that the world is constantly evolving and changing. As a leader, you need to get your team to come along with you on that change management, and you can't give from an empty cup. My family has the background in dairy farming, so you never got a day off. You were milking cows twice a day. And that work ethic has just been driven into me. People tell me, we don't know someone who's left public accounting to go work more hours. Most people leave public accounting and go back to public accounting because they're bored in industry, right? Well, trucking is an industry you can join and not be bored.
Yeah.
But yet, so just having that work ethic and then saying like, hey, rest. God rested on the seventh day. Why do you think you have to work? And so it's like this motto I'm living into is saying like, you need to rest so you can do your best work, not rest when the work is done. And it's like, I just have a ton of mentors that pour into me to help me make these decisions courageously.
That's great. Yeah. And the thing I liked about what you said is really every every cycle, every time in history has challenges. It has new innovations. It has things that are changing, legislative changes, this, that, whatever. And as leaders, that's part of the process, right? That's what you have to work through. It's block and tackling. Just have to understand and make those decisions. And some of them fail, some of them don't work out, some of them are wildly successful, right? And so, but being in that seat is key to look at those trends that are out there.
We're all running under the same guidance and guidelines, right? I think what hurt us the last 4 years is we were competing against people that weren't doing it right, who have a much lower cost structure than us. But that's kind of when you can get frustrated about a new law or whatever got thrown at us. Well, all of our competitors have the same rules that they're operating under. And
That's
now
a huge opportunity now, right? Like that's a massive change in this upcycle.
I've never seen government move at the speed in which we're moving. So I was just got an update from Administrator Bars, and 28,000 drivers have left our industry due to the English language proficiency alone. So that's the most up-to-date number that we have, right? Okay. And so it's like to have that number and us all operating, they're doing their job to get the bad actors off of our highways, which give the people doing it right like a wide open opportunity. And that's what my team's hearing from me is we're doing things right. And you should look at every one of these as opportunities of where we can act and make good progress.
Yeah. And how many people out there are saying, finally, it's a level playing field. It's just the rules of the game are the same. That's great. Yeah. So Tom, there's some people out there, lots of changes in terms of technology and the industry and legislation. The risk factor, I know that's near and dear to your heart, is the risk associated with various companies. I'm sure you look at that day in, day out, have those conversations. Yep. There's a thread out there that says the single truck operator may go away in the future. Mega carrier is the only route to go. Like, how do you see companies at different stages being able to survive in today's sort of risk-heavy environment?
Well, so post-Montgomery, the quick narrative was that small carriers and small brokers are going to suffer. First of all, so at Reliance, we work with about 200 underwriters within the motor carrier community. I'll tell you this, good safety and good financial strength will never go out of fashion. So small carriers that are committed to doing things right, and even though their profit margins may be depressed versus a normalized period, number one, they're on the road to recovery, but we underwriters always will have a desire for safe, compliant motor carriers. And then you have a spectrum of risk within that around the finances, but that will never go away. Yes, there could be some brokers that go out of business for a while. I was with a shipper last week, and I'll keep it confidential, but big global shipper, almost 20 billion of revenues. And they had to let go 131 motor carriers and brokers last week because they don't meet the new safety standards that they are adopting. Now, they still have several hundred that are in their fold. And it could be that some of those small carriers and small brokers end up revising their standard operating procedures and can get back in later in the year. But we are hearing that. But on the flip side, I was with another large retailer, not named Amazon or Walmart, and that right now their tender rejection rate is only about 74%. So it's much higher than Craig Fuller's tender rejection of 16, 17% right now. They're seeing 25, 26% tender rejection rates. So that means that shippers are going to be forced to revisit some carriers and brokers that they may have stepped away from right now, but later in the year, they're going to have to revisit some of them if they're safe and compliant because they're not going to get their loads covered.
So Tom, lots of change, a lot of changes in this piece, a lot of obstacles, a lot of new things, whatever, again, same patterns at the end of the day. But if you look back at this cycle, who's your winners and losers? Who has made changes that you felt invested in the right things, did the right strategies to set them up for success, and who do you think were the ones who probably didn't make the best decisions going into this next upcycle?
Well, I think the winners were the ones that focused on the controllables. So they took care as much as they could about their cost structure. Now, it's been inflationary for everyone,
Right.
but they still took a look at processes and tried to streamline things. They got ready to really improve the customer experience, and they, as much as possible, improve their safety. Even if their insurance went up, I think about a company like a JB Hunt, where they've been very public talking about 3 years of record good safety performance. So they were ready to rock and roll when more volumes came their way. Losers probably just got so beat up by the environment that they stopped focusing on their cost structure. Cash is king. Karen mentioned that earlier. You can never lose sight of that. You almost have to have a private equity mindset during a downturn. Then you have to have an entrepreneurial mindset during an upturn. I mean, we could get into all sorts of different modes in that, but I think those that got frustrated and didn't continue to just be razor sharp with their cost and keep their people buoyed. I mean, you really have to keep your folks buoyed during this period, because they, like Karen said earlier, there's a lot of people that have come into the industry, even if they've been around 5 or 6 years, they've still seen more of a downturn than what they saw with the upturn that preceded this. So you've got to constantly educate everything around this, and then you got to be bold. Right now, the time to step out with your customers and have these conversations is right now. You don't want to wait until your contract renews. Even if you can't move the needle until that contract, you got to be having these conversations right now.
Yeah. I was on a show a couple of weeks ago, and they asked me, what's the big story of 24 and 25? What's the big headline? I was like, we made it through. Like the success stories are the ones that actually lived, right? I mean, let's face it. That's huge. The fact that they made it through, they lived through such an impact to a down cycle, that's a huge headline. Karen, what are in the down market? We revitalized, reinnovated our organization, focused on our culture, focused on the customer at the end of the day. Like what are some of the things that you put in place during this down market that you knew you were going to capitalize in the next upswing?
Well, first I'm going to say trucking's back, and that's what my team's hearing, and it's exciting. So it's like, dang, do we still have to talk about the down cycle? But I'll talk about it.
This will be the last time.
It's like, it kind of felt like, as a leader, you just had to level set yourself, right? It was like, and you could sit here and beat yourself up because all of the work that you were doing, you could never reap the rewards of the time and energy and money that you put into something, right? Like, and so it was like, I had to tell myself, like, I'm doing this for 2, 3, 4 years out, 5 years out, 10 years out. And actually, as a privately owned company, not publicly traded, I don't have quarterly investors that I have to satisfy. So I get to make long-term decisions that might not actually look good today too.
Yep.
And so going back to the cash is king, keeping that in the back of my head of saying, don't get too aggressive with your spending. But to me, it was, we never stopped investing in our technologies, because I know that we're a technology company that owns trucks and employs drivers. And that's how we stand out to our customers. And so what my team hears from me is, I'm investing in technology to replace keystrokes, because I want you to have time to invest in relationships. So come along with me with this change and watch your time get freed up to better have great conversations. You don't have to cut people off when some of this is happening. And if you embrace this, we're going to grow as an organization. So it's really saying, like, are the things that I'm doing, will those have scalability when the market allows us to do those things? So that was a tough one, but yet we kept doing it. And that's where, though, I would also say is, we always thought it was going to get better in 6 months. So it's like, we literally thought, like, 9-month cycle, we thought we have to get through this 9 months, then 9 months. And then it was like, whoa, do we have to cut back more than what we had already done? I mean, we were very, very, very stringent in our spending, right? Like we cut back, but I had to always guess, like, there's companies that cut back saying, we're not traveling anymore. And I'm saying, now is the time that you need to stay educated and make sure you know what's happening outside your 4 walls, right? Pull this together. So you can make sure that you comprehend what's happening out there. Because if you cut things off altogether, that's not going to help you on the other end either. So
Right.
there was a lot of decisions made, but in a summary was stay educated, keep learning, and keep technology moving forward.
That's great. And that's seems like a cultural shift. No matter what the future holds, technology is going to be a key to that, right? And so getting your people involved in that, the adoption of change, the willingness to change, the ease of change, that'll make huge impacts to organizations down the road, no matter which cycle we're in at that point. So awesome. So the last question, just real quick, Karen, what's the one thing that you're focused on, right? What's the one thing you're looking at right now, you're watching in the space?
AI.
AI, there you go. Yeah, awesome. Tom, how about you?
Whatever additional enforcement is coming. And, if we look at the 3 cycles before COVID, and COVID was a steroid induced demand party, but the 3 cycles before that had one regulatory change each. And just for the sake of brevity, I won't review all of that. Thus far, we've already had announcements around 5 key things, from ELP, non-dom, CDLs, ELDs, and now the Montgomery court case. And there's going to be additional teeth put into those to better enforce those things. There could be another 6, 8, 9 things coming down.
Right.
Potentially higher insurance minimums, changes to broker bonding requirements, additional changes that we can't even foresee. So I think there's a lot more coming, and motor carriers sometimes get a little ahead of themselves and think about, well, this is going to be a 5-year cycle. I forget about that. Just take it 1 year at a time. But the backdrop is in place where this could be a pretty special cycle and have some legs that go a little bit beyond what we've been experiencing over the last few recoveries. So watch the enforcement, watch the additional teeth that they put into place so that they can better enforce things that are already on the books.
Well, hey, that's a great place to end. A very upbeat for where we're at and where we're headed in the future in this crazy trucking space. Well, Tom, Karen, thank you so much for joining me this season with Cents Per Mile. It's going to be amazing. I'm super excited to see what we talk about next. Shout out to FreightWaves for the partnership, and a mega shout out to all the amazing people at CDL Life who make this possible. Thank you for watching. Click subscribe down in the bottom. Head over to centspermilepodcast.com if you provide feedback, or if you want us to cover a topic in the future, feel free to send that in. And don't forget, next week we'll be right here on FreightWaves TV at 11:30 a.m. Eastern on Wednesdays, every Wednesday, every weekday, every Wednesday of the week. And anytime you can watch us on FreightWavesTV.com, centspermilepodcast.com, or check us out on YouTube. Thanks for joining.